Alright, so this is pretty rich. For those who don't know, Mass Effect Andromeda released in the exact same month as Breath of the Wild back in March of 2017. This isn't really that notable considering that Breath of the Wild came out on two platforms that Mass Effect Andromeda's not even on, and they're not really even the same game. One's an outer space RPG where the other's more of an action-adventure medieval fantasy game that has some RPG elements. But that didn't stop Mark Dara, a game developer on Mass Effect Andromeda, from essentially blaming Breath of the Wild for why Mass Effect Andromeda flopped. I couldn't be making this up even if I wanted to. So Mark Dara recently spoke with Game Informer in their popular 123 rapid-fire question series, talking about Anthem in particular. And during the video, Mass Effect Andromeda came up when the host asked, did Andromeda get a fair shot? To the question, Dara replied by blaming 5 other RPG games that released in the same window as Andromeda. And of course, he had to mention Zelda by name. I think it came out in a really busy window in March. Perhaps the busiest window in the history of the gaming industry, where 5 RPGs released in the same month. It came out in the same month as Zelda. So, 5 RPGs did not come out in March. Let's clarify that right now. Zelda itself is not an RPG, and why Zelda is mentioned by name makes literally no sense for this comparison. As I said, Breath of the Wild came out on 2 platforms that Mass Effect Andromeda wasn't even on. Zelda could not have impacted the sales any less at all. Even if it didn't release, it doesn't matter because Mass Effect Andromeda is not on the platforms that Zelda is, and Zelda is not on the platforms that Mass Effect Andromeda is. There literally is no crossover in terms of Zelda impacting Mass Effect Andromeda sales. Now, you could talk about arguing for mind share of the public, but even then, they're not on the same systems. So there's no way in heck it could really massively, negatively impact people who own PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC from buying Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, he did mention that there was obviously 5 RPGs released in the same month. Well, going back and looking at it, there was only really 2 RPGs that released in that same month. One of them is the absolutely fantastic Nier Automata, and then Ghost Recon Wildlands. But Mass Effect Andromeda, above both of those, is considered more of a traditional RPG. So while Nier Automata and Ghost Recon Wildlands could be considered RPGs, they're not really in the traditional sense like a Mass Effect is. So again, they're kind of different. They're not really encroaching on what Mass Effect does in terms of being a true core RPG experience. And to say that it is coming out perhaps in the most difficult window or the busiest window in the history of gaming industry, how? I thought that honor belonged to something like Titanfall 2 dropping in the middle of Call of Duty and Battlefield and Battlefront launches, like dropping in the middle of all these other massive shooting games, dropping a Titanfall game. Isn't that more of a deterrent here than something that is vaguely related? You know, because there's RPG elements, there's a vague relation between those games and Mass Effect. And on top of this, obviously takes a lot of blame away from the fact that Mass Effect Andromeda was receiving oodles and oodles of criticism before the game even came out, before reviews even came out. People who had review copies or went hands-on with it at events were not saying kind things about the game in the months leading up to launch. So sure, Breath of the Wild had a fantastic March and has had a fantastic month every single month since, but that's because people liked it heading into launch. People already were against Mass Effect Andromeda heading into launch. Now, we need to be fair to Mark Dara. He did update his statement a little bit. He's still blaming Zelda. It's really weird because someone took this as, oh, he's not blaming Zelda, but then he still mentions Zelda. So let's get into this. He went to Twitter to re-explain himself because obviously in a quick on-the-spot question, you might say something that's going to upset people, and you don't have the full context of those statements because you're just rapid-fire in answering. So here is what he said on Twitter. I'm going to regret this in a half hour, but let's talk. Did Mass Effect Andromeda get a fair shake? He starts by acknowledging And Andromeda was a deeply flawed game, especially at launch. From there, though, he starts explaining some of the external factors that had an impact. The review environment was crowded. Nier, Neo, Horizon, and Zelda all launched in Mass Effect's window. Only 3 of those games did, and none of them are traditional RPGs. But sure. Each does something better than Mass Effect Andromeda. So then he says, again, a flawed game. So he's admitting that these games did things better and that Mass Effect Andromeda is flawed, but it's not Mass Effect's fault, remember? As a result, even systems that are pretty decent get scrutinized against superiorly implemented ones. Does launching in a different window turn 72% into 90%? And I think he talks about sales throughput of what they shipped. Certainly not. 72 into 77/78? Maybe. And I just... Where does this mindset come from? I have to be fair in that I have not played Mass Effect Andromeda. I played the Mass Effect trilogy. I ended up playing 3 on Wii U, but I played 1 and 2 on PC. I really enjoyed the trilogy. I didn't necessarily like the original ending of Mass Effect 3, but by the time I played it on Wii U, they obviously had made patches and added alternate endings, and it ended up being just fine. But I honestly didn't play Andromeda because of the reviews being terrible, there being lots of graphical glitches, because I was going to play it on PC, because I figured, you know what, the most enjoyable experiences I had with Mass Effect were 1 and 2 on PC, so I might as well play it on PC, and I just never bothered to get around to it, because it looked like a hot mess. It kind of reminded me of, was it Assassin's Creed Unity when it launched? And it had all of these issues at launch that looked like the game had not been polished, it had not gone through proper QA testing, and it was just a mess, and I refused to play that Assassin's Creed, and to this day, I still have not played that Assassin's Creed. Thankfully, they got it right with Origins, and hopefully they're getting it right with Odyssey, but it's still one of those things that's stuck in my mind that, okay, this is the first Assassin's Creed game I actually don't want to play because I don't trust their ability to polish these games, even if the core elements of the game might still be great. And I think there were some core elements of Mass Effect Andromeda, at least based on some playthroughs I watched, that looked good. But unfortunately, there are so many bad things, so many memes that came out of it because of how bad certain elements were, especially early on in the game. A lot of the facial animations were having massive issues. To take blame away from their mistakes and put it on the fact that other games did it better. It's just, you can't, even in the case of Titanfall 2 that dropped at a bad time, I don't think you can necessarily blame a launch window for a game failing. I know it can be hard to grab attention when there's other major games out there, but you know how you grab attention? You do it better than everybody else. If you are openly admitting that all these other games are doing things better than your game does, and that's on top of the actual buggy mess issues your game has in the first place, something tells me that the reason your game isn't selling that well is because you just didn't make a very good game. Mass Effect Andromeda is just a bad game. It has no one to blame for its failure but itself. I just think, I mean, it's just a thing that happens in the industry. Our individual game developers sitting back and looking at the grander scope of the industry and being like, you know what? It's that their game over there's fault why our game didn't sell well. I don't like these excuses. Make great games. Great games typically rise to the top, especially in the AAA industry. If you make a really, really great game in the AAA industry, it'll have no problem standing out regardless of what releases around it. And reality is that Mass Effect Andromeda isn't, dare I say, it's not even a good game. It's okay at best when everything is working. It's kind of a big step back from even Mass Effect 3, which, by the way, Mass Effect 3 was fantastic. Just the ending that was forced to get the game out on time, not so great, but the actual most of Mass Effect 3 was excellent. So it's a shame to see that happen to the Mass Effect franchise. Hopefully they bounce back with something better next time. Hopefully these attitudes of blaming Zelda and blaming basically any other game for your failures and your pitfalls, is thrown away. Like, my thing is, if I released a game and all these other games I feel like did certain things better, that makes me look in the mirror and realize we're not as good as we thought we were and we need to do better next time. But that's just me. Anyways, folks, I'm Nathaniel Robojans from Nintendo Prime, and if you like this video, you know what to do, and if you dislike the video, hit that dislike button. Before we sign out, I want to give a big shout out to Player Essence, who I initially saw this story at I do have the original source and his video of this linked down in the description if you would like to check out his channel and check out his amazing news coverage over there. We are just now slowly getting back into covering news. I am not 100% recovered from surgery yet. Obviously, I'm not even on camera, still voiceover over gameplay, but we will get back at it as soon as I am physically capable of doing so. All right, folks, I will just catch you all in the next one.